Welcome to Stream, a trucktractortrailer.com production. My name is Zach Miller. I'm your host, and I'm honored to be joined today by Andrew Neer from Innovative Lease Services, or ILS for short. Andrew, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach. It's good to be here. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I really appreciate that because I really appreciate the role that you and your company play in the logistics supply chain space. I mean, let's face it, if people can't buy equipment, nothing's moving, nothing's happening in this country. I mean, people don't really talk about the financing aspect of this industry that often, but it's absolutely crucial. Frankly, it's probably the most or one of the most crucial aspects of this industry, and we don't really talk about it too much.
Yeah, we're kind of like the grease that keeps the wheels of commerce spinning. I mean, it's just and it is. We're the deal behind most deals, especially in this industry vertical. Assets are expensive. You make your money over time through using that asset, and so being able to incrementally break the expense of that out as you're making your money, you're paying for the asset. It really inures to the benefit, especially the smaller owner operator, small fleet size entities that are typically undercapitalized.
That's exactly it, and I feel like it's one of the interesting draws to trucking, right? Where that you can really. You need training, no doubt, but you don't need so much training. You don't need that expensive 4-year college degree. So, on the one hand, you say, well, there's a low cost to entry for this industry, except for the fact that the assets themselves kind of cost a fortune there, right? So it's like, yeah, so that's that balance in that, like, the cost to get in from the training aspect is low. The cost to get in from the asset aspect is very high, and that's where you folks come in.
Yeah, we do, and so it's interesting because that barrier to entry, right, is just pretty much in that class. Interestingly, now though, you can start out in this career making as much money as a 4-year college student without all that student debt. It's a good time, right?
Exactly.
But that barrier to entry is significant, and it's tough because oftentimes this is the first large ticket asset purchase. And so from a lender's perspective, you're looking at history in the credit file, what we call comparable debt. Have you ever had a payment this much per month before? So we can see that you have a history of being able to pay that high of a payment. So you get a lot of guys that they wind up signing on with a larger fleet that's better capitalized, that this upfront cost isn't as expensive. Get a number of years of experience and save up a couple of bucks of scratch and then go out on their own. And we really are positioned to help facilitate that. We have a saying here, we enable the American dream. So that's entirely what we're here for. So yeah, I mean, those are our people, right? That's our typical client comes to us for that first asset acquisition.
So then if they don't have a large credit history, what do you look for exactly? How do you determine whether or not you can approve them or you have to go back to them and say, I'm sorry that this won't work out right now?
Yeah, so the traditional credit analysis are the 3 C's. So what we're looking at there is we're looking at the credit history, the character, and the collateral. And so credit history is what it is. It's primarily going to be your personal credit file, unless you have business credit established already. And some people come to us, they do. They finance a couple of rigs, and so we can see that they've got a history of repayment, good, bad, or otherwise. And so we'll look at that credit history. Character is just another reference on there's subjective and objective there, right? So objectively, do you have a CDL? I mean, are you prepared to be a driver in this industry? Subjectively, you can get into some other elements. There are some elements that we look there on the credit file. History of bankruptcies. That doesn't preclude you from being available for financing, but it is something that goes into the overall analysis. We see issues with tax liens. We'll see issues with child support, and so there's some other non-credit bureau stuff that we look at.
I'll tell you what's interesting just quickly with the child support. Child support is this type of thing that it causes a lot of problems for drivers that they don't even necessarily realize, even from their CDL. I mean, the CDL could be suspended for lack of child support payment right there. I mean, it's a big one to be on top of. I think that a lot of owner operators, a lot of truck drivers don't quite get the advice they should when it comes to making timely child support payments.
Yeah, it's one thing. I mean, if you've got, it's fine if it's on there, but yeah, if there's a collection associated with it or a garnishment, then it becomes kind of an issue. And I don't want to overstate that too much. We don't see a ton of that, but it's just funny. Over the years, I think we've seen one of every potential credit scenario. So, but the third part of that is collateral, and this is where specifically in this industry, we can buoy up the application file because the collateral is good, especially in today's marketplace. We've seen an appreciation in the assets that we have on book in Class 8. So that collateral is good. We know that when we put $100,000 out on a rig, that reasonably speaking, we've got the ability to repossess and remarket that if we had to, for some large amount of cents on the dollar. I'll give you an example. Typically in equipment side of our business, non-titled assets. So we're talking restaurant POS systems, we're talking brewery equipment, all kinds of crazy other assets that we've done over the years, tanning beds, fitness equipment. So across that entire collateral class, we'll see around 25 cents on the dollar overall net after we repossess and remarket. When we get into the titled assets, though, there's a readily available marketplace for those assets. So we know that we can take a little bit more risk, understanding that our asset's going to hold some of its value more than it will in some of our other verticals.
That's incredible. So you would say that in terms of various assets that you finance, trucking actually holds its value at a higher level than some of the others?
That's correct. Yeah, historically, trucking is going to be one of our better asset classes, along with what we call yellow iron generally. So, everything that's painted yellow that does construction work.
Mm-hmm.
Excavators, skid steers. So those harder asset classes we can lend a little bit deeper against just because of the nature of there's a readily available secondary market, and they typically hold their value better.
I'm so glad you bring that up because, speaking of the secondary market, trucktractortrailer.com they're building the world's largest pool of pre-qualified buyers. And that is straight up through the secondary market. The secondary market, as we all know, is really how the small and mid-sized fleets attain their vehicles. They're not the ones, they're not going to buy something new fresh off the factory line. It has to be that secondary market. So to be able to go to a secondary market where you're pre-qualified, where that there's a financing such as ILS available to you, I mean, that as an owner operator right there is a huge asset. And I would imagine from the financial services, it's a huge asset too, to know that there's a pool of pre-qualified people looking to get into the industry or looking to acquire assets.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're so proud to be partnered with TTT and to be able to provide our technology onto their platform. And I mean, hey, we're not the only lender that's out there in the universe. Don't tell your audience that. We are the best. So unbiased. So what we've done specifically with TTT is we've integrated our system. So we've taken our technology that we've built out over the last 5 years of almost near-time credit adjudication and pre-qualification. There's no cost to the applicant for our pre-qualification. There's no impact to their credit because we use a soft inquiry. So it doesn't impact their credit at all. And they can come on platform, they can utilize our service, we can get them pre-qualified to a certain amount. And yeah, they're a stronger buyer when they're out there shopping for these assets on platform because they're already pre-qualified. They already have an expectation of their pricing.
And I want to go back to the point you made earlier about how trucking assets maintain their value better than some of these other, assets out there. That means that there are lots of people in your field, your competition, that might jump into this because they see a large profit margin, but maybe don't quite understand the industry, maybe don't quite understand, who they should be lending to, maybe who they shouldn't be lending to, which I think puts people who would use your competitors probably, I would say, at a competitive disadvantage from those who would go to you guys, who have this really strong understanding of the industry, who have this really strong understanding of the customer base, of the end user base, and the asset themselves. I mean, it's about it's bridging the gap, right? The asset and the user, making that deal together. And I think, just like choosing your equipment is a huge deal. I mean, that's going to be your livelihood. Your finance partner is a huge component of it too. You can't overlook that.
Yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity to comment on that. It's been a unique pleasure of ours to have been in the industry for so many of its cycles, right? And we've seen it's really easy. Like right now, trucking's hot. You want to jump in, right? I mean, it's from a lender standpoint, the collateral is great. Everybody's performing. The demand is there. I got to say, 2.5 years ago, there was a trucking recession, and we saw a lot of our independent owner operators, especially, really feel the squeeze, right? Lower carry rates, higher fuel costs, and so we've taken the stance that we're hearing the good times, but we're also hearing the rough times, and we have to help our customers navigate those times. I'll give you an example, and it didn't wind up being needed in transportation, at least in the trucking side, during COVID as much as we'd feared initially. But we took a stance really early on that any of our customers that needed financial assistance or forbearance, that we would work with them to help navigate the issues. What we were fortunate to see that outside of passenger transportation, really the pandemic didn't have a big impact on our freight customers. So, but in the past we've gone cyclical and some of these downturns, and you have to be able to weather the storm for your customers, not only because it's the right thing to do, but it also builds long-term relationships. Let's face it, our typical owner-operator running a single rig or a handful of rigs, that's that family's primary source of income.
Yes.
That's how they pay the mortgage. That's how they put groceries on the table. And it's unfair for us to really ask that trucker to say, hey, choose between feeding your family or making our payment this week. And so, we can restructure transactions. We can put, payments on the back end. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do. As long as the customer's working with us, and we have open communication, we'll go to bat and, kind of see it through the storms.
And that's why it's called a partnership. You guys take that seriously, and that's how you conduct yourself in your operations. And that's why owner operators and small fleets should really look for a partner like you that takes the partnership part of it seriously. It's sort of like you set yourself up. The more barriers you put in front of you, the harder it's going to be to succeed. And a poor financial partner, a poor platform partner, you're making life harder for yourself. This is not an easy industry to turn a profit in, and you want it to be as smooth sailing as possible. You really do.
Yeah, and that's so true, right? Because it's at its very root core, it's a commodity-based business, right? I mean, it's a race to the bottom on behalf of people that are shipping, and you've got to make hay while the sun is shining, and you got to survive, when it's cloudy. So that's it's the nature of the business. And one of our specific core competencies is the small business owner. I mean, yes, we can finance a 100-rig operation, and so can 27 other banks, right? And so it's really that 80% of the businesses that are not bankable or typically are going to be underserved by the banking system that we're really here to enable and support.
I mean, as you've explained it before, with a really strong platform that you guys have, that you guys use. And I just do want to ask about this, because you see a lot in the news recently, the last year and a half, about FineTech, about how, FineTech is sort of the next big thing, the next big frontier. It's like FineTech and crypto. And frankly, I don't think a whole lot of people understand what any of that is. But, I think for people who really, for people who maybe can't quite go to a bank, or who aren't going to get approved by some of the larger lenders out there, what separates ILS from a FineTech company, and why should companies go towards the ILS platform and away from the FineTech platform?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So there's a couple different. By the way, we've been modeled as a dinosaur out, I think 3 or 4 times over our 30 years of business. So, but I'll say 2 things. First of all, like that whole fintech like platform is great on the consumer lending side. I think it works really well for people that are looking to get a home improvement loan, or they need $20,000-$30,000 cash like quickly, because it's completely leveraged on the personal credit bureau. Some other people like SoFi, they'll put in educational attributes and things like that. On the commercial side, it is different. There's a number of companies claiming to be that, but the reality is it all comes back down to we're all pulling commercial and personal credit reports. We're all looking at the asset, and I'm sure there's a ton of people that are listening to this today that have gone through that process to get approved to be declined because it's a truck and you're an owner operator and you've got partition plates. And we'll do it for you if you are an ice cream shop putting the truck there and serving ice cream out of it. But if you actually need to use it as a truck, crossing state lines, we can't do it for you. It's still as technically savvy as you want to get. It still comes down to, especially in these types of industries, relationships, talking to your customer, understanding their needs. Now, with the TTT platform, we have that technology developed. It's been put in place years ago, and now fully connected systems for allow that customer experience to come through platform, get that pre-qualification. So we're kind of like the fintech that cares, and we'll actually talk to you on the phone and make sure you navigate your deal. So we've hybridized ourselves to have that technology in place, but also still maintain that kind of personal touch, to the relationship. We'll see. It's changing so rapidly. The marketplace is flooded with cash. And so cash is looking for yield, and that creates a lot of irrational buying on the lender side. We'll see that. We've seen it before. Feel free to take advantage of that, customers out there, if you can and when you can, because there's sometimes silly money available, and but that's not long-term money. And so we're here to position ourselves for our customers over the long haul. And I do want to say one interesting thing. We were talking earlier about collateral, right? And one of the 3 C's of our decisioning. One of the great things about being on platform with TTT is if there is a disruption, and life happens, right? I mean, people get divorced, unfortunate circumstances happen that your business may not be able to continue on. Where those situations occur, because of the power of this TTT platform, we can help our customers that are exiting navigate that asset, putting it back on platform, and having another saleable event, or oftentimes find somebody that's willing to take over those payments because you're a year in. And in the best case scenario, maybe you're 2-3 years in, you're exiting. There's some equity in that rig. We'll have our payoff established. It can be sold off platform, and it's a good exit strategy as well. So I think the platform brings so many different attributes to the customer who's buying the rig and the customer that's selling that rig, that it becomes that one-stop shop for everything you need. And we haven't even talked about warranty service yet. I mean, the ability to on platform get a warranty, we can include it in the financing. It's it's worry-free asset acquisition. So yeah, it brings a lot to the table for us as a lender.
It's really a one-stop shop, I think, for everybody, for the buyer, for the seller, for the lender. It really is sort of a closed loop cycle that makes the buying process as painless as possible, I'd say.
Yeah, I think from the customer experience, and I know the team at TTT from really early on and to every day, and I know we have a touch point meeting every Monday where we drill this in. It's all about customer experience, right? I mean, everything we do, and I can speak from the financing side of that, is curated to the customer experience. That experience for the customer is the best they've ever had, the best it can possibly be, and we recognize from the management side that we can always get better. And so, with that kind of philosophy coming into every transaction we do, let's score it. Where could we have done better? Where do we miss? Where do we hit it out of the park? Because we know that experience can always be better, as good as we are currently, right? But one of the things you touched on is the seller side of this, right? So having your asset hosted on a platform allows you to have access to the largest pre-qualified base of buyers. And so as a seller, what you're getting is somebody who's bidding on you with the cash in their pocket, so to speak, right? The financing's in hand. So you know your buyers are not shoppers, they're buyers, and you can spend a lot less time kissing frogs and a lot more time actually moving your asset. Especially if you move a lot of assets, that's really meaningful.
Absolutely, absolutely. So people listening, go to trucktractortrailer.com, become a registered user, get yourself pre-qualified, set yourself up for this, successful future in trucking and transportation, because this is a very hot market right now, as Andrew said, and we anticipate it to be a very hot decade, frankly. A lot of changes, yes, but a lot of freight's going to be moved, a lot of construction's going to be happening. It's a big decade for trucking moving forward here.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We are so bullish on the next, we're already we've seen supply side pinches right now, and just to work through that system, we've got 9 months to a year of just, great times, let alone everything else coming down the pipe with infrastructure. And I would encourage, even if you're, currently, sitting listening to this podcast and you're thinking about different markets you could serve with a different trailer, for instance, adding, bringing another driver on or two. Get pre-qualified, see what your options are out there. It doesn't impact your credit, and, gives you options, right? It gives you the ability to make moves opportunistically when that moment hits, so that you can execute on that.
Andrew, I feel like I could talk finance with you all day. I
appreciate you. I appreciate you find it fascinating, because I bore a lot of people around my life.
Nah, it's a fascinating
try
topic.
To keep it light, right?
Yeah, exactly. Light, fun, educational. That's what we strive to do here. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate the work you and your team do at ILS. Guys, please remember to like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you next time on stream.